Good afternoon, our viewers. Welcome to the Women's Show. This edition will be specifically talking about 59 years of Uganda's independence. What does it mean for us as citizens, but also what does it mean specifically for women? And to join us today to share their thoughts and their experiences being first and foremost Ugandan citizens, but also having lived in the country, we are joined by Sandra Ahamya. Sandra is a human rights enthusiast and a lawyer as well. And also Marion Kirabo, who is not very new to Civic Space TV, right? Yeah. She's the founder of Present Woman. Yeah. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, so I'll start with the basics, right? So we have done 59 years of Uganda. We're almost reaching the life expectancy age somewhere in there. What have been your thoughts on independence? And I'll start with you, Sandra. What have been your thoughts on independence over the years, and how have these thoughts evolved also as you evolve as a person in Uganda?
Thank you so much for having me today. My thoughts about independence, and I'd like to start from a woman mother perspective, is that a country, Uganda, was birthed by someone in the 1962 when they decided and said, you know what, in 1962, here is Uganda, we have delivered. The British delivered. So you see, as a child grows, when you get to age 18, there is an expectation that you have gone either through school or you're going through school, you're able to reason out certain things. And so over time, whereas Uganda was birthed, I choose to use that word, in the 1962 by the British. Over time, I feel and I hold the view that whereas we were birthed, we haven't been able to live. There are positives, well, to this independence, but also I feel like there are certain issues that are still lacking. It's either that this child, when they were birthed, when Uganda was birthed, the preparation wasn't done well enough. And that's why we have certain issues up to today. For instance, we've not had a peaceful transition of power. So, and we have human rights issues. So, whereas this child was birthed, and I appreciate that she was.
She has failed to grow.
The growth. There are issues here and there, and the growth. Yeah, so my point of view about the independence, our independence, is that we can do better. We can do better.
Yes, at 59 years, we should be doing better, right? Yes. Yes, Marion, over to you. How have your thoughts on Independence Day, the idea of independence of Uganda, evolved over the years?
Personally, the idea of independence has always icked me. Like, okay, maybe I overthink it. That somehow we're supposed to be grateful that the white man gave us independence and freedom, and then we come and we celebrate this day, and then we start having conversations about how life was before, and how the fact that the bunch of tribes were ganged up together and put into this thing that we call Uganda. And somehow we're supposed to be grateful that the white man gave us a constitution and gave us the rule of law and gave us all these systems. I've never quite understood the whole concept of independence or the celebration itself, that somehow I'm supposed to be grateful that, okay, perhaps we are grateful that we fought against oppression, but then I look at everything that came with it, and then I wonder if really we have anything to be grateful for, or if we should celebrate it in the first place. Of course, it's better than the alternative of being still under colonial rule, but what exactly do we have to be grateful for are some of the things that I ask myself. But I guess on the brighter side, don't mind me, and just perhaps I'm pessimist. But on the brighter side, we can say that, okay, maybe we have that pseudo kind of political independence, and we can move freely and there is no racism that we experience, that we are perhaps better off than our black brothers in the European countries and countries like America. And for us, we can feel at home and we can trace our ancestry, and we don't have we have a challenge of identity, but at least we can trace it somewhere. At least we can access services. At least we are equal among ourselves, blacks. Are we? Are we? Well, well, apart from class systems, you can't say even the white Americans are all equal. There's that class, but at least the judgment is not on things that you don't have control over, than your skin and maybe So I think maybe to me, I'm quite how can I say, confused about independence, and it's to me it's a double-edged sword. Whenever independence comes, it's a normal day to me. I don't
really even celebrate a public holiday.
Maybe apart from staying home, and then we stay home and you just say that, oh yeah, you haven't gone to work today, you haven't gone to school today. But I've never really wrapped my head around the whole concept, really. Maybe as I grow older, I will be able to digest it.
Yes. So so our theme for the 59 years, right, was celebrating our 59th independence as we secure our future through mindset change. Of course, there are very many things to debate here. What is the definition of securing a future? But also when we say mindset change, like whose mindset are we changing? What is the problem with the way Ugandans are thinking? And one of the things that you raised that was very important was the removal from colonialism. So I just want to throw a question out there. Have we survived this big idea of colonialism, or are we just somehow pretending that we're celebrating a day and we have the power as a nation, as a people, to determine what happens to us every day? So I'll start with you, Sandra.
And again, where we are as a country, 59 years later, what we have, who controls what, your GDP, and how this country is run, you cannot say that, maybe to say that colonialism took on a new face. It took on a new face, so you have fellow Ugandans doing worse than what the colonialists used to do. So, and again, like Marion said, the question of whether we are independent, I think it is one that we are going to struggle with unless we put our foot down as a country and decide on certain things. Because if it is 59 years later and you have people being taken into safe houses, basic human rights, children haven't gone to school in how many years? This country, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, whereas now there is mass vaccination, then it has taken us about 2 years. So I feel like the basic things that an independent country should be having or should be enjoying, we are still lacking. We're not even at 50%. And so colonialism for me took on a new face, and we are being manned, or they are gatekeepers of colonialism. Although those gatekeepers are people like you and me, because you see, oh, it's Sandra, I know her, she's black like me, or her identity, or she's
came from the same village.
Yeah, she comes from the same village. So you see, for me, I feel like colonialism has taken on a new face, and we have a task to unmask the new face. And once we maybe unmask the new face, maybe by the time we turn 60 as a country, either we should be doing better, and if we are not doing better, we should be fighting to
be better.
To be better, yeah.
Yes. Marion, there's a very important point that Sandra has raised around the issue of GDP, and I know that the president in his speech was very heavy on numbers. We've come from here and we've gone here. Our GDP is at this point. We project that it will be at this point in like 2050. He also said that our first oil is going to come out of the earth in 2025. We started from please let's not laugh. Yes, so this big heaviness on numbers and it translating for Ugandans in their everyday life, what does that look like?
Well, the president has been singing about we reaching middle income status for the last 30 years that he has been in power. I think we're supposed to reach it in 2020.
Yes.
Yes, and here we are. I don't even think we have even reached a fraction of what we're supposed to achieve. So it's a normal rhetoric, and I don't know who his economists are, but perhaps they should be fired because they keep on giving him wrong projections and give him a false, a dream-like reality of what is actually true that is not corresponding. I think for us Ugandans, those numbers mean nothing. At least, even when you speak of GDP and what, to the common Ugandan, what does that even mean? Because to the common Ugandan right now, they are in a pandemic. They have been under lockdown. Most of their businesses are closed. So for you to tell them that some money in let me say 2030?
For that oil?
Yes.
2025.
2025, or is it 2030 or 2040? Right now, to a common Ugandan, they are sleeping hungry. Mm-hmm. And all the businesses, most of their businesses are closed. The prices have gone high. You see, the economic crisis cuts across the world right now, because I've even seen multinational companies crying that they're going to increase the prices, their prices of the commodity. Pepsi recently gave a press conference? They gave out a statement saying that they're going to increase the prices of their products. And so for a common Ugandan right now, GDP and what does not make sense, because you cannot be telling me that all the numbers are looking so good when I'm sleeping hungry. All the numbers are looking so good when I'm being kicked out of my house because of rent. Mm-hmm. All the numbers are looking so good when I cannot keep my business afloat. You know, so what does GDP and let me say economic growth mean to me? Unless economic growth has suddenly translated into the high rates of poverty that I'm now facing, if that's what they mean by growth, then yeah, so surely I'm growing poor. It's really working. So to me, as a common Ugandan, that means nothing to me. Economic growth means nothing to me. And suddenly this whole these economists and maybe people who take are becoming very irrelevant to me right now, because their numbers do not translate into my reality. So to me, that's what economic growth means to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Sandra, so you mentioned something about human rights violations and all the years that we've existed. So we're at 59 years and we've been through a pandemic. One of the things that has been very evident in the pandemic is how people's economic and social rights have been affected. And I'm going to specifically look at how we boast about being a young country. We have young people, the future is the young people and all of those things. And also the president was really big on ICT in his speech. He said, oh, now internet costs have reduced. We have about 2.5 million Ugandans, I think, on the internet. Like, he was very big about the conversation on internet. And yet we've had a situation where in 2 years, kids have not gone to school. Okay, certain category of children have not gone to school, because it would be a lie for us to say not, like, everyone hasn't gone to school, right? So certain children have not gone to school. What does it mean for us as we start to think about a secured future and a change of mindset?
I don't understand what you mean, because for me, one, I do not agree that there is anyone securing anyone's future anywhere. And it's not this government, it is not President Museveni and the wife at the Ministry of Education. I do not think that they care about Ugandan children, those that haven't been able to access education. Because those that are accessing education in this period are the privileged. And those ones really, I'm not here to talk about them. So there is no one securing anyone's future anywhere. And it is better that Ugandans understand that, especially the Ugandans like me, whose kids have not gone to school, whose siblings haven't gone to school because of the pandemic. And what does that mean? Because you will see that in the 2021 general election, that youth turnout, the people who came to vote, the youth that came to vote, were more than the previous election. Was more than the previous election, which is a good thing. Or maybe people are tired. But we Ugandans, like the people some people in this country say, we have to kweberera mo, because there's no one fighting for us. And if there's no one fighting for us, that means that you either you've tried elections, they have not worked, and I'm not proposing any alternatives. I don't want to be quoted to have proposed any alternatives, but it is high time that we appreciated that those that we are saying, please, you're going to secure our future. Our mindset change is in your hands. They don't care. So if they do not care, you, the Ugandans, if the Constitution says power belongs to the people, if they say power belongs to the people in the Constitution, how are you exercising your power? Well, you went out and voted, your vote was not counted. So what do we do next? So it's high time Ugandans started having conversations of, if these people that have promised to secure a future are not securing it, what are we going to do to ensure that we secure our future, our children's future, and change the whole mindset? And Marion mentioned something that I wanted to comment about. That it's not that there is anyone telling Mr. Museveni wrong, giving him wrong figures. What he chooses, what he wants, because it works in his favor. It works in his favor that he cooks up stories, tells you that there is a vision 2040. And that vision 2040 is never realized. It's just on paper. If he uses it to get money from World Bank, from whoever gives him the money to run his show, he will use it. So the economists around him, you have to understand. And for me, he's been in power for the 59 years. He's been in power for the 35. Out of the 59, he's been 35 years. 35 years, economists have come and go. You've had different people at the helm of BOU. You've had different people at Ministry of Finance. The PSs of Finance, they have changed. At the moment, there is a very great lecturer of economics. He's the PSO. I am very sure that all the economists that he talks to, they are brilliant. But he chooses what he tells because it is his agenda. He's not benefiting. He's the one who's been here longer. Not these people that come and go. So yes, so I think it's high time that we started having this conversation as Ugandans, that this thing is not working for us. So if we're going back to the drawing board, what do we do?
Thank you very much, Sandra. Over to you, Marion. Sandra raises very critical issues, right, about seeing things for what they are supposed to be. And I know that as part of the things that you've done over the years is that you have been part of political leadership within institutions of higher learning. And that's one of the places where politics has shown us over the years that specific interests must be guarded for certain things to actually happen. And we're going to stick a little bit on the conversation of education because it's very, very critical given where this future someone is trying to secure somewhere. Universities have been closed. They have told, actually in the last address of the president, he said, universities can open provided all the students are vaccinated. Yeah. How is that working out now? And based on your experience working in that field, do you see universities opening anytime soon?
Well, if we're going to use that as the basis, I highly doubt. I first want to say that, in my opinion, and it's not to be alarmist or anything, but just by going by facts, I feel like we are losing a generation, a whole generation, because if you look into the media and you see that, let me say, 1,000 girls in a particular district, I think I saw, as it Kabale, some time back.
I think it's been all the districts in Uganda.
Yes, it has been all the districts. And if you put the numbers together, I think they surpass millions of girls now. I'm not sure about them. But it's happening every day, every month. The longer we keep in this lockdown, the more generation of young women that we lose, of young girls, that they are not safe at home, they are not safe in their communities. The only shelter they had was the school environment. And without that, they're losing futures and generations. And like we say, that if you lose your young women, then you might as well, the country's future hangs in a balance, to me, because these are, women do contribute to the economy. Women do contribute to the continuation of a generation, you know, without women, then it's the women, because most of these girls are abandoned by the people who impregnated them. So this is a young mom. So think about the future of this kid that she's giving birth to. No source of livelihood because she dropped out of school. She probably will have to then fend in wherever, let me say, do those small, you know, gets into, let me say, cultivation, and she's paid very little. So you're creating a poverty cycle for the next generation, that we're going to see a generation that where the levels of poverty increase and more people fall below the poverty line. And then for the schools shutting down, the schools that can no longer keep up with the economic times or keep afloat. Then what about the generation of teachers? Are you expecting that someone who, because the schools have been shut down, he has gone into, let me say, brick making, for him to come back? What is the mindset of that person? He's talking about mindset, but how is the mental health of that teacher coming back? That my students have been seeing me tilting the land and digging. And then also, for us who are planning to go to the university, is really the education profession something that we are looking at after seeing how teachers have suffered during this time. So to me, the education system is in trouble, you know. I recently saw, as it, which organization, I think it was UNICEF, was it? Giving the Ministry of Education some money to kind of see that schools are open.
And then they used it, I think, for building blocks or something.
So is that what we're supposed to be doing right now? Shouldn't that money, okay, if we're saying that the thing is vaccination, instead of using it for building, shouldn't that money be allocated to especially these schools, these private schools? Because private schools are the ones that have been mostly affected. And they're the ones that take education to the communities, to the lowest, and outreaches where government cannot reach. Couldn't that money be used to make sure that we have vaccination points in those different schools, instead of spending them on whatever they spend them on? I don't even know. Today it's structures, tomorrow it's cars. I don't know what this government is up to. But isn't that what we should have been looked at? Okay, if we're saying that the girls are going to remain at home, can we look at ways to keep themselves? Can we intensify sex education? Can we intensify access to contraceptives? There is the issue of there's also been issues coming up of menstruational health during this time, that girls are saying, my parents only used to give me money for pads when I'm at school, and now that I am at home,
the period doesn't come anymore.
Exactly. So couldn't this money be used to combat some of those things? It's really depressing for me, I would say, as a young woman looking at all these things happening. I don't know if members of parliament do feel the gravity or look at the same newspapers I look at or listen to the same news bites that I listen to. But I think independence to me was a day of grief, because I don't see what I should celebrate about when all that, at least as a young woman, I don't see what it is that I am celebrating on this Independence Day, given the horrors that I have seen during this lockdown and this pandemic. So when you talk about the education system, if we are going to weigh on vaccination, first of all, this government does not have its priorities right. So vaccination is not going to be a priority. In Makerere recently, we have been having the argument of whether, we have university hospital where they put the vaccination centers. And we have been having the argument of, okay, there are too many people there, the lines are very long. Why don't you guys bring them to the different colleges, bring these vaccinations within the university if you want it to open up? And they're telling us, you see, we have costs, keeping the vaccines, high in that temperature,
yes,
there's a cost that comes with refrigeration, and having all these health workers, at these different points. It needs money that we do not have. So now university, this is a university, it's a public entity. I'm imagining the private rural school, the cost it will take for them to vaccinate, given the fact that their health centers are miles and miles away from most of these homes and these schools.
Yes.
So I don't see any hope inside. I think what we need to do is maybe let's just do what Tanzania did, open up everything and pray to the heavens that there is a miracle. After all, we have been lucky as African countries that the pandemic has not hit so much as in Europe. Even with the new Delta variant and what, it has not pinched us. Yes, forget about the fact that, prominent people have been coming, but to the wananchi, people have been getting healed. They do their local herb things, local remedies, and they heal. Perhaps, in East Africa, I think it's only us who are locked down right now. Is it?
Plus Rwanda.
Maybe Rwanda.
A few restrictions.
Yes, a few but for it has been more attentive and more robust. But Kenya and Tanzania are open. And so
Kenya, a little bit. Kenya keeps having those on and off lockdowns.
So perhaps we need to rethink that if, what is the cost? How many people have lost their lives? How many people are losing their futures compared to, let me say, the number of deaths? I'm not saying, I don't want to be, okay, the devil's advocate in it, but maybe we should start to look at the cost benefit, cost benefit ratio of this lockdown. Is it worth it? There are people who are dying, committing suicide every day because of this pandemic. People who are dying of hunger because of this pandemic. There are so many things that are happening, and we're losing more people to other pandemic-related situations compared to the disease itself.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and then we will return in a few. So welcome back, our viewers, and again we continue our conversation on 59 years of independence. Sandra, I'm going to start with you. When we went for the break, Marion was talking about teenage pregnancy and what it means for the future of this country. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, the president made very unfortunate remarks about teenage pregnancy and how, like, women dying, giving birth, and what was not like the biggest deal of issues on the table. And it's also something he did not speak to in his speech, whether it's issues of gender-based violence or anything like that. He was silent on that and more interested in economics and security. What do you have to say about that? And what does that mean, in all honesty, for whether this country is interested in the well-being of women as a collective?
Thank you again. And I think that the president holds the view that you are better, I use this loosely, safe than sorry. For he would rather you are there, not educated, but alive. But you can't be alive like that. That you are just living one day at a time. So to taking back where we started from 1962, when we had our very first constitution. And over time, the constitution has evolved. We've had women's rights included in the constitution to say that we are all born equal, and therefore we should have access to certain things because we are human. By the virtue of the fact that we are human, we should have access to healthcare, we should have access to education, we should have access to everything that's listed in the bills of the chapter 4 of the Constitution, which is the human rights. And over time, and I'm talking about women generally, then I'll talk about the girls, that we have seen women have the ability to in succession laws to succeed there. And that has been a battle also, but it has come a long way. Succession rights, land rights, property rights in case of a divorce, in marriage. So we have seen there has been some sort of evolution over time. But you see, this evolution, whereas you have the right to own land, whereas you have a right to all these things, the evolution has got us to a place where we are now stuck with young girls. You have these rights, but you are not able to sort of enforce. You have a right to education, but you are not accessing education. You have a right, it's merely written. So, and again, it's problematic that we are here in this age, and maybe COVID did, some people will not praise it, but I think COVID did well to happen because it exposed a system that we're operating under, a system that has failed us. You appreciate that you've evolved, but you've evolved and got somewhere and you have got stuck. And you are stuck in this place because of the 59 years. There is someone who has eaten 35. And that person who has eaten 35 seems to, they've got to a place where they are no longer thinking about things of, people, the basic human rights of healthcare and education. So I think that whereas there's been some progress in terms of evolution of women's rights, human rights, and young women's rights, it is our mandate, you and I and Marion, to either sensitize, because I'll tell you for a fact that even those that we've elected and they've gone into parliament, they have not represented us. Forget about the affirmative action. We've had the affirmative action. We've had people in parliament, women representatives, but those women representatives are nodding exactly what they are, or what the affirmative action article for us, so they would do. They are just there, on salaries, and maybe when it comes to Tojikwatako or a bill like that, they will second a certain position. So it is high time that I think we went back to the drawing board. I don't even know where that drawing board is. We need to find it. We need to find it. And it is also important to recognize that we have the space, because we are here as women talking about these things, which means that we have the privilege to talk about these things, but not just talk about these things, finding ways of influencing policymakers or the policy itself to see how our young girls and our young girls that are not in school, our young girls that are suffering with menstruation problems, reproductive health problems, how they can be assisted. Honestly speaking, we are in a tough place. We are between a rock and a hard place. And I'm just hoping that we find that drawing board and do something.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. So as we conclude this conversation, Marion, if you had the power to move all the pieces, what would the future of Ugandans look like?
Before I go there, I just want to maybe add onto what she has said and say that I think the president's remarks also goes to show the state and how this government regards women in general and our issues. That in spite of, quote unquote, the progressive, let me say, we are very progressive when it comes to, let me say, law and legislation when it comes to women. But these things seem a bit plastic, you know. The affirmative actions and, let me say, the succession bills and the what and God knows whatever, GBV acts and are not really necessarily there to help us, or they're not even made in a way that can help us, but because the donor wants you to somehow look progressive and wants you to look very pro-women, so the president decides to put it in his law that, you know, let's do this and this. But when you come to the the bottom of things, getting his thoughts on when he actually thinks of women, for him, he finds no problem whatsoever that a 12-year-old is pregnant and she risks getting fistula or dying at the maternal ward because she's not developed enough to carry this pregnancy to term, or the fact that she's going to lose her education because, well, she's now a young mother, and with that she has a lot of responsibilities that would hinder her from accessing an education, or it will begin the poverty cycle because now perhaps she comes from a family that was even struggling to pay her own fees, and now they cannot now support a young baby and her. You get? So it does not matter how many laws you're going to put in place, but if you have not addressed the basis, like the fact that she is a woman, and because of a woman, she has specific challenges that even if you're to put in place and say that she's going to inherit her father's property, but she's inheriting it, have you looked at the fact that she has all these other problems around her? That it does not matter if you put in place a law against GVB, but have you looked at the fact that as a child mother, there is also a level of abuse that comes with that she is incapacitated to actually even use these laws that you have put in place for her. But even the community that she lives in, they just want to look at her and say, "Oh, you know, you have no respect in society. How can you get pregnant at a young age?" So to me, it just brings out a picture that he doesn't care. that this government does not give two fucks about women. Sorry, forgive my French.
Blooper there.
Yeah. So it's a story state. It's a story state of events, I must say.
Yes.
But
so as you wrap up your thoughts, what would be the ideal future for Ugandans?
Well, of course, the ideal future for Ugandans is, first of all, having a government that cares. I would say that is everyone's, because everything ends and starts from there. That you have a government that cares enough about its people to have its priorities right. That for all the money that it gets, that it's not spending them on building, building new blocks of schools, and yet there are schools that are there and they're struggling to keep afloat. That you have a government that is actually spending money on getting vaccines, equipping their hospitals, paying their health workers during a pandemic, and not spending their money on double cabins and giving ministers new cars and all these other things. That you have a government that cares that teenagers are getting pregnant, and therefore it is scaling and using whatever money it gets from donors to make sure that it provides, let me say, contraceptives. It beefs us and accelerates its education, sex education programs. That it makes sure that it brings the vaccination centers to the venue of the schools themselves, so that students can just come, get vaccinated, and perhaps in 2 months are back at school. That you have a government that is trying to subsidize the rent of, let me say, traders in Chikubo, because they understand that these are hard times, and therefore, in order to keep the economy afloat, they need to kind of create a soft landing for the people who are participating in this economy. It starts with a government that cares. I would just put it simple like that. A government that cares and a government that functions. Perhaps it's being too simple, and I don't want to go into the thing of destructuring the whole makeup of, if democracy works or not. But let us just say that if we had one wish, if I had
simple
wish, is just to have a government that cares about Uganda.
Yes, thank you very much, Marion. Sandra, if you could move all the pieces, if you had the power to move all the pieces, what would the future of Ugandans look like?
I think that the future of Ugandans for me would look like the way the Constitution says that we should have the power to make decisions about our lives and things that affect us. If I could move the pieces, for me, that would be it. That Ugandans have the power to decide that so-and-so is our president, so-and-so is our member of parliament, and whatever they do, they are accountable to us. Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, our viewers. We hope that as we celebrate 59 years of Uganda, but also as we move into a future, like the theme said, we are trying to secure a future somewhere for some people, but also changing a mindset that we as Ugandans, we will take on the mantle of being completely involved in all the social, political, and economic aspects of our country. We will hold our leaders accountable, and we will be able to contribute meaningfully to the future that we seek to have for every single Ugandan. Thank you very much for joining us on the Women's Show on the Civic Space TV, and we wish you all the best.